Well, let's dive into the demos because we are almost right on time. I wanted to give 10 minutes to each one of these demos. So that means we'll wrap up about top of the hour. For the two demos I want to show, this is a sample prompt I want to give to them. We have at 6 feet up a scaffolding product called Scaff that builds out a Django backend with a Next.js front end, and it has a Postgres database and a Redis cache built into it, and a Mailhog like all in there. And we run it using Kubernetes locally and in the cloud for sandbox and production. So this can throw your AI agents for a real curveball. And so I want to show off what I feel like is a powerful ability of these AI agents is to be told what to do. The first one we're going to look at actually is going to be Aider. The two tools I picked to start off with are both open source. They both allow you to bring your own models, which is a key aspect I like about that. You have the ability to not only bring models that are in the cloud, but you also have the ability to bring models running locally via Olama. So if you've got Devstrol downloaded and installed or Codex downloaded and installed into your running Olama, both these tools can use those local models and never have the chat or the data from your code leave your computer. Obviously, you need a pretty beefy computer to do that, but these both give you that capability. The benefit I find with Aider over some of the other ones is it is very, very Git aware. It is semi-agentic. I think Travis had mentioned that kind of types of operation and being like fully autonomous. The Aider tool is just semi-agentic. It doesn't go into full autonomous mode. It'll ask you a lot of questions. It'll kind of guide you through the process, which I really like. One downside, no MCP support currently that Aider can use. There are MCP servers written to use Aider on the other side, which is kind of interesting. You could have your Claude Code orchestrate Aider and theoretically save some tokens, but there's no MCP support in Aider itself. So that's a one limiting factor here. It does support voice interactions. Goose, the GUI, has voice capabilities, and Aider through the command line actually has voice capabilities. And you can use multiple models in the same session. And I'll show a quick demo of that as we go through the quick demo right here. Is that you can actually have a different architect model than the coder model, than obviously the voice model, than the weak model that's actually making quick decisions under the covers. So it's like an orchestration platform of multiple models going on simultaneously. We'll come back in here to talk about that afterwards. We'll quick
Quick
Chrome.
question, Kelvin, for you.
Yeah,
Do you have much experience using local models with Aider, or is that just it's an option and it's a kind of a nice to have feature?
I have toyed with it. I've never used it seriously yet,
Okay.
just because most of the projects we are on don't require me to use any kind of a local model. But if they did, the Devstrel model and the Llama 3 and 3.2 models from Meta actually
Mhm.
quite capable. What's key for those models that you run locally is that they have a large context window. You will need to change a setting in Olama to get the context window to be larger than 8K. But once you do that, it is capable of blowing out whole project skeletons and
Hmm.
just giant chunks of
Wow.
code and reading in more and more of the context and being quite capable. I think if you didn't do that, you would have a limiting experience and you might think it isn't working well for you. But there's just a little bit of tuning that needs to be done for that to work. Now, I have a MacBook Pro with an M4 Max CPU with 64 gig of RAM. So
Mhm.
that gives me a lot of breathing room to be able to run my IDE plus Olama plus the models, because some of these models can be quite large and use 20 30 gigabytes of your RAM or more. So
Right.
having 64 available finally made that decision to upgrade the RAM much more logical and makes sense. Okay, let me see here. I want to show off real quick the code we've got in here. So the code structure we've got is actually there's a backend folder with the Django app, a front end folder with the Next.js app in it. I've got a Kubernetes folder in here that has all the manifests for deploying local sandbox and production, and then we've got Terraform for later. We do have a full GitOps pipeline with this, but we're not running that today. Right now, with that running, this should be, yeah, here we go. Oh, that's the Goose one. Here's the Aider demo one. This is running using Tilt to manage and maintain all the interactions between me and my local Kubernetes cluster. So I can sit and watch, as code changes, it pushes the code into the cluster. That again is a challenge for these coding agents. They don't know how to run commands necessarily in that cluster. So that's one of the things that you have to be highly aware of is how do you tell your coding agents how to run commands up in the cluster? Let's see here. I want first one I do is a lot of times I'll use some prompts to ensure that the coding agent understands what I want to do here. So I've got a prompt which is that says this project using tilt and kind to run local Kubernetes clusters for development. Show the running pods for this project. So this will require the agent to think about how it's going to do that. And so you can see right here, it's like, okay, cool, I can run this command. And this is the semi-agentic part of Aider, is that it'll ask you. You can also say, don't ask again, but in this case, I will say yes, and it'll start running some commands, and you can be like, do you want to add that output back into the chat? So you can actually make the chat aware of everything that's going on inside of here. You can also now tell it to get pods. You can say, yeah, I'll add that in the chat, add this all into my like namespaces. So you start gathering a lot of interesting data, yeah, about what's going on. See here. The next thing I want to do is see if it can create a Django superuser inside of the Kubernetes cluster. Because be able to access the running Django, which I showed off right here, if we click on this 8001, you can see I've got a running local Django with the Aider demo. If I go to /admin, I don't have a username and password to log in here yet. So I think admin doesn't work. Nope. It's going to be like, sorry. But if I come back here and say create a Django instance, or create a super user in the Django instance with a username admin and password admin, we'll see if it can actually get that done. And sure enough, it knows that it needs to use kubectl exec to be able to understand this. Now it's going to ask for adding certain files into the chat so it can get additional context. I mentioned Aider is very Git aware. So what it does is it actually has a repository map from Git that it keeps into its context as well. So it knows how to find quickly files based on structure. So there's common files in like a Django project that it'll know that it needs to get access to. So here it's going to actually ask for that so it can understand uh, it's wanting to understand the settings files to know how to do that. So I need to create, oh, it's interesting. So this is where they can get a little bit off the rails. It's actually trying to make management commands for me to create super users, but I'm like, no, you have that ability. Use the manage. Oh, it looks like it did it. It didn't actually execute it. Huh. Use the kubectl command to create the super user. See if it figured it out. I may punt on this and see if it does it. Ah, here we go. Yes. Let's see if that worked. Of course not. Well, that's beside the point. Some of these tools have trouble, again, understanding your project structure. Let's get down to the real prompt that I put up there in the original setting. Is that this project was bootstrapped from SCAF, and it uses Next.js on the front end and Django on the back end. It originally was written with GraphQL API support, but I want to actually convert the app to use the REST API. This will be interesting because I may have to turn this one into like full automatic mode, is that it's going to analyze the various files that are inside my project, try and understand what's going on inside of there, and says, yeah, do I want to add all these? I'm going to say don't ask again, and we're going to let it rip. Don't ask again, don't ask again. Why is it still asking me again? Stop asking me, just do it.
Looks like it's going through every single file. Is that per session, or will that persist when you come back into here?
So the memory of the session will persist between launches, and so you can tell it I want to relaunch with that session. Actually, you should also pay attention to is the amount of tokens you're currently using. So you can see right here, I've got only 9K, almost 9K of tokens used currently on Aider with using Claude Sonnet 4. But let's take this next step level, our next level with this tool. I'm going to tell Aider to use architect mode, and we're going to use the Fireworks version of DeepSeek, and we'll use the editor model of Sonnet. So this actually enables a couple things. And another thing we can do in here is if you're working with an IDE and Aider, you can say watch files and it'll look for edits coming from your editor as well. And you can actually put in special comments in your editor that'll trigger Aider to watch for those comments and say, hey AI, fix this or implement this. And so you can actually do that in here if you wanted. So there we go. This is going to use once the Anthropic key. Ah, of course. No, it should have used the okay, so here I've got DeepSeek and I've got an editor model of Sonnet, although it's going to fail. Hold on a second. I think I can do this real quick. Uh, Let me open that up here. One thing, if you're using 1Password, you can copy secret reference, and that's super handy because I can do this now. Export Anthropic API key equal, and we'll just grab that from 1Password if you have the 1Password command line installed, and it'll never go in the clear, which is also really nice. There, now that should work. Bingo. Let's repaste my prompt in here and see if the DeepSeek model with a bit of architecting can figure out what's going on. So here you can see a lot more reasoning happening, and it's showing you all the thinking going on in the DeepSeek model. But it's incredibly quick. So it starts to think about what kind of changes it needs to make, what files we touched, all these kinds of bits, and it's still using the same session and history from before. So yeah, I do want to add that. We will do that. Yep, all that stuff. We're going to add this in and let her rip. And I find this interesting as a developer because I will sit and like read along the thinking and be like, oh yeah, or no, wait, hold on, you're way off track. So make sure you pay attention to what these tools are doing for you. I don't think vibe coding is the future. I think actually understanding and working with these tools as your sidekicks is really the future here.
I appreciate that delineation, Kelvin, because I often use that output as a signal to like stop, course correct.
Yeah. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that it is doing like a diff format. See the replace and the search. This actually is really efficient when it comes to using tokens compared to like Claude Code. It uses a diff format on the backside. Oh, it's interesting. List index out of range. Maybe it's just got too big. We'll just go into slash code mode here and tell it to do the same thing. Oh, that's not it. Sometimes if you typo, here we go, slash code had a space in front of it, so it took that as the text I wanted to send to my LLM. Now we're in the coding mode, and we can basically send the same thing. And so it's going to, again, I don't know why it's thinking again. So it should already have that thinking in there. What I'm going to do is while that's doing that, we're going to move on to the Goose demo, which will be somewhat similar. One thing I want to note is that the way I can tell my editor or my agent how to do things is using special files like conventions.md. So Creator will load and launch and look for that file. There is a new standard on the way for agents.md out there, and many of these tools can actually read in multiple files simultaneously, which means you can launch multiple instances of the same tool, but with different configuration files and conventions. So you can have a DevOps agent, and you can have your backend developer agent, and your front-end developer agent who have special instructions that know how to do that. You do have the ability to use, I mentioned showing tokens. If you want to clear the context and kind of start fresh with the various LLM slash, there's a lot of slash commands built into Aider, which make it quite nice. And you can actually start with that lint command and test command, and it can actually run your tests for you as you change code on the backside. So Aider's very developer friendly, developer centric, wants to run your tests, wants to be get integrated, and it saves its changes as it makes changes to your code as git commits in there. Of course, it hasn't changed a darn thing yet. It's getting a lot of extra context in there. We'll come back to Aider, see if it does actually make some changes. But let's get on to Goose.